All right, I'd like to call this April 17th meeting of the MPO to order. We do have quorum. Thank you everyone for showing up on time. Our first item is a vote on the approval of the agenda and would entertain a motion.
Move.
Moved by Des Moines, seconded by Ankeny. Discussion on the agenda. None. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. The agenda is approved. Next item, approval of the March meeting minutes.
Move approval. Second.
Moved by Urbandale, second by Polk City. Any discussion or clarification needed on the March meeting minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Up next is our public comment portion of the meeting. Do we have anyone signed up or anyone present who would like to speak under public comments? All right, doesn't appear to be anybody unless Clifford wants to step up. All right, up next is our consent and vote. Here, if you have questions, be happy to answer them. Otherwise, would entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second. Moved by Des Moines, seconded by Waukee. Any questions on the consent items? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent is approved. Up next, we have a presentation on the water trail project, and Dylan's going to introduce her icon.
Thanks. Looks like we have Monica Converse coming up to the stage. Mark Brown from Snyder to on what's been going on. Stephanie is also here in the audience. We'd like to just give a regular update on this project every so often, since we are technically the ones building it, at least the downtown portion. So I'll turn it over to Monica.
All right, thanks for the intro and thanks for having us. And I'm Monica Converse, project manager with Icon Water Trail. I have Mark Lang, Snyder and Associates here, who's our owners rep on the project, and executive director of Icon, Stephanie Opel, is here as well. So run through some project updates for you, starting with Scott. So many of you are probably familiar with this project down by Mullets and Single Speed, but we're making some great progress here. This picture was from earlier this week. As of last fall, all of the work at the Cascade Drop, which is on the right side of the picture that you see here, is complete, and then all of the dam safety modifications are done as well. So that was a good milestone to get through. Right now, they have the center and the south third of the river kind of cofferdammed off to work on the fish passage, which is in the middle section of the river. And then they're going to turn the focus to the recreation components, which is on the south side of the river. So a lot of progress happening there. There's been a lot of activity there throughout the summer as well. And that's on the in-water piece of the project. So just a reminder, we did bid these projects separately. There's the in-water piece as well as the uplands. The uplands are all the park-like amenities on the south bank. So that construction did start this week as well. So that they have similar contractors. The same contractor that's part of the joint venture doing the in-water is doing the uplands as well. So that'll make hopefully some coordination between projects that are occurring in the same area easier. As of now, the in-water is complete, expected to be complete by the end of this year, with the uplands following next summer, pending no flood event by last year's. And this is just kind of a rendering of what the project will look like when it's all done. Moving on, Harriet Street. So this is just downstream from Scott. This is going to be kind of the final exit point for the downtown circuit. Majority construction is complete here. You'll see some pictures, and this is the parking lot on the bottom picture, and then they did pave the boat turnaround this last fall. So most of the construction was completed last fall. There's just a lot of cleanup things that need to happen yet, let some plantings established and things like that. So we are planning a ribbon cutting event here later this summer. Berlin and Prospect, we're not losing sight of. So just a reminder, those per the build grant do need to have construction completed on them by September 30th, 2027. So we are continuing to finalize design on those projects. The City of Des Moines was awarded a overall P grant to the National Park Service. So our project is one piece of their overall birdland project. So we are working with them on getting that, once that agreement is executed, being able to kind of strategically time the timing of our project as well, so that we hopefully have coordinated efforts there. And then Prospect, we'll be picking that one up again here soon too. So. There we go. All right, and then a big project that we're spending a lot of time on right now, this one wasn't necessarily part of the build grant project, but I think it's important for all of you to be aware of what's happening. This is our Floor Drive project, so this is just north of Grace Lake Park on the Raccoon River. We're in the final design phase of this one. We have 100% design being completed here later this month, going to go out for bid in May, with bids being received in June. So this one, a lot of efforts being done on all parts. We did have to go out early and procure the collapsible flashboard gate system, which is a critical component of this project that mitigates the upstream. There's just a long lead time on that product, so that was procured last month. So we're working through that right now. So that way that can be manufactured and be on site and ready for the contractor to install later this year. We are also working through property transfer agreements. So this property is on a peninsula on the water side of the levee. That is currently owned by the city of Des Moines, but it's going to be transferred to Polk County Conservation because there are water and land legacy bond dollars being used for this project. So that is all underway along with all of the permanent and temporary construction easement work. So we're working through that with all the parties. We are also working through some tree clearing efforts, and construction is supposed to start for the In River piece by July 1st. Now, uplands will follow next year, or later this year. We'll issue bids for that. Some upcoming events I wanted to make you all aware of. May 29th, the Iowa DNR, we're working with them to plan a designation event. So we are officially designating the Beaver Creek and part of a new stretch of the Des Moines River. So it's going to be it's going to be a fun event there at 1 p.m. to celebrate that. And then if anyone's brave enough to paddle, we're opening up a 3-hour paddling excursion after that as well. So you're welcome to join for that. June 11th is our first inaugural Icon River Fest event. So we're working with all of our jurisdictional partners to provide cleanup efforts throughout all of the Icon network. So this could be both trash cleanup and invasive species cleanup. So we have a lot of great business corporate support on this event, providing both sponsorships and volunteer hours for it. So a really great effort, and we're excited to see how this goes. July 15th, 3 p.m. We're going to be doing the groundbreaking for the Hubble Trailheads. That's the Floor Drive project. So mark the calendars for that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, August 27th at 10 a.m. we're going to do ribbon cutting for Harriet. And one other thing we've been spending a lot of time on, I wanted to make sure you were all aware of, this is part of the build grant requirements, is we have been developing the artwork for the signage for our Scott and Harriet sites. But what we're developing here will set the precedence for the rest of the downtown sites going forward too. So here's just kind of a sample of what the kiosks are going to look like. It was kind of an evolution of the Central Iowa Bike Trail signs for those of you that know what those are like. And then we're just developing mapping and safety guidelines and things like that to go on these kiosks. And we also have some interpretive panels for each of these. We have an interpretive panel at Scott for the City Beautiful movement, which was a requirement of the build grant. We're going to celebrate the history of fishing at Scott as well, since that's such a popular fishing destination. And then at Harriet, we're going to talk about, we have a wetland there, so we're going to have an interpretive panel explaining what a wetland is. And then we're also going to celebrate some Native American history there because there's a nearby palace site that was found not too long ago, given Harriet Street site. So any questions? Threw a lot at you, so yes.
So we approved some change orders earlier for the Scott Avenue. How are we doing more recently on change orders?
Yeah, so far in the grand scheme of things, we haven't had a huge change order dollar figure amount. One of the change orders was strictly schedule related due to the project being underwater for 3 months last year. So that was just a schedule implication. Do you remember the change orders today?
Well, what we're looking at now is figuring out there's a section of trail that we're coordinating with the city in terms of the levee project. So there's going to be a little piece that's going to go into the Scott Avenue project and out of the levee project. So that's one that we'll be seeing going forward. But other than that, as we kind of project, like what are things that are lingering right now, unless there's a similar kind of flood event that we had, and not, that we're feeling pretty good, and the contractor has been very good at communication and understanding the plan, forward with the bid and the costs that are currently under contract, so.
Any other questions? All right, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, up next, we have a presentation, of Reimagine Dart, and Amanda's taking the podium.
I'm really excited to see this presentation again. But a few of you have not seen it, and we have shortened it, but Mayor Bozen and Councilman Schaefer, I think, win the award for seeing the lists. It's not good. I don't know, it's just slow. I'm patient. I'm very patient with technology.
Bus pass.
So just a reminder on why we're doing Reimagine Dart. You all know Dart was formed almost 20 years ago, and the current network was put in place when Dart Central Station opened in 2012. We all know we've seen a lot of change in the last 15 to 20 years in our community. We also know how people are traveling is different than it was pre-COVID. And in addition, we all know that we have very real financial constraints, and we want to deliver the best service possible we can with the dollars we have. And with that, we need to have some conversation about what we want for the future. I did want to give, as we have been talking the last month, I did want to add some additional context I haven't shared in previous presentations. And we are really focusing right now on the system design. The system itself, the hours and miles of service, are the bulk of our cost. And so how we decide to design that system is the biggest decision I would say we have as it comes to the future, but it isn't the only thing. And many of you have asked us, well, are you looking at other things? Are you looking at other models of service? And just want to be clear that we are looking at other things. Again, right now we're focusing on fixed route and micro transit. And then we will be looking at fleet, right? If we go to more micro transit and more coverage, we're going to need our change our fleet and have smaller vehicles. We're also looking at our fare policy. Some of you have asked, should we charge more for on demand? Is our fixed route fare right? That is a next step in this as well. In addition, we are looking at additional models of service. Van pooling. Again, van pooling is another thing that has changed. Some of you know we've had some nonprofits trying to meet workforce van pool needs. We have some vans available, and we think there might be some synergy there, but we have to test it and find out. So that, along with the economic impact study we're doing with the NPO and much more, there's much more to Reimagine Dart than just the system redesign, but the system redesign is instrumental to where we are right now. And, probably one of the biggest decisions the commission has in front of them. So as we talk about where we are right now with the system redesign, the commission will be giving us 2 sets of direction in May. How much transit service can the region afford? And really what this is going to be is, what is the budget for our draft network? Or possibly there's consideration of doing 2 draft networks given some of the unknown. You'll see the biggest budget is really a status quo of our hours and miles of service. So all that does is take our hours and miles of service and figure that we need 4% expense growth, because most of that is wages and fuel and things that drive that expense growth. We're also looking at 2 slightly smaller networks to give longer sustainability for the system, which we know is important for people. In addition, if the property tax bill goes through as it is right now, that will be major cuts. And so again, there's a few unknowns here. So really what the commission will be deciding is what 1 or 2 scenarios they want for the system design. And then that we will be getting feedback on how we balance coverage and ridership. Again, some of you have heard this all before, but I will get into coverage and ridership. Again, here's the timeline. We've got May public input right now through May. May 6th, we'll have a commission meeting where we'll have some conversation. May 19th is the commission meeting, votes on those. Then we immediately that week begin development of the draft plan. And so that week of May 19th, some of your city managers, some of the commissioners are also invited to help inform some specifics of that draft plan. So you will be getting invites for daily check-ins or additional calls. We're working on forming that. And then we'll have public input on that draft network in August, with the goal of the commission adopting a new network in December so that we begin implementation of it in the summer of 26. So this is our existing network, and this is where I'm going to focus on ridership versus coverage. What is really important to note here is colors. So the dark red means service is coming every 15 minutes or better. You only see that at University for a short section of University. There's more where we have service every 20 minutes or better. That's purple, blue every 30 minutes, light blue every 40 to 60. And then you see a bunch of brown. The light brown box is the Darden to make the APB pilot we're doing. There's also light brown that goes to Bondurant, Urbandale, Johnston. Those are routes that come a few times a day, but not throughout the day. So our consultants took really two opposing viewpoints and to just show two extremes. And I can explain, we do not choose all one or all the other as a region, but from an engineering and design perspective, again, hours and miles of service is what drives cost. And so we need to be clear what goal we want. And there's really two extremes of ridership and coverage. So you can see ridership here. You can see we have a lot more red. It's more frequent. And then you can see that there's some light blue where it's every 40 to 60 minutes. But this does have 7-day-a-week service in all communities. And so that is, an upside and something I'll talk a little bit more about. Then there's coverage. Ridership, you will see, I'll just go back. There's plenty of areas that don't have much, right? And we know that's hard. We can provide more by doing more of that micro transit and some less frequent fixed routes. And that's why you see in this design where we have far more of those brown boxes where we're having micro transit zones and we have less frequent routes. You don't see as much red. And so again, this is okay, two extremes, but how do we want to spread the resources we have? What goal do we want? One thing I want to be clear on, but also clear, but open to feedback from now and from our commission later. Currently, this shows the differences in microtransit. Fixed route would be your far left, what we have, a route runs along a main corridor. And then we have our door-to-door fully flexible zone, which is what we're doing in Ankeny right now. And this is really the least efficient way to do microtransit. And so our consultants have proposed, and I'll add to this, this again shows the difference is a benefit of ridership is fixed route as you get more riders. You can't carry as many riders simply because of the geography on a micro transit. But that is why our consultants are recommending we go with the second from the right, where we don't go onto every single cul-de-sac. We ask people to walk to a virtual stop that is maybe a block or two. And again, just cuts back on the amount of miles we have to go, and thereby we can pick up more people. So that can get us closer to 5 people an hour on micro transit. A few facts on just differences in this. One of the key things we look at is how many people are near transit. Our existing network, there's 4% of people in our region who are near 15-minute service. 44% are near any service. In the ridership concept, you can see benefit here is we have 13% within 15 minutes of service, 38% within any service. And coverage, you can see here is the benefit is that you have 67% within access to some service. And so that really just kind of clearly shows the trade-off of those as well. And so that's why the coverage concept gives you more people near some level of service. Also as we look at some of our population folks that we've been asked to really ensure we understand how it would impact them. This is going to show the ridership concept better because this is really looking at where can you get in 45 minutes, walk, wait, ride. And so the coverage concept, it reaches more people, but people might have to wait longer or their trip takes longer. So again, there's upside and downside to both. One thing I do like about both of these plans is that they all increase access to jobs on Sunday. You will see, and you all know, we have far fewer white-collar commuters coming into downtown. We have more people who need access to service jobs and retail jobs on weekends, midday, and nights. And so that is why in both networks, we have additional service on Sundays and less peaky service. So some of you have asked me about if we can be somewhere in the middle. Do we have to choose all one or another? And does every community have to choose the same thing? And it's not a perfect science. So the commission, at our May 6th commission meeting, we will ask where every community is at and what every community wants. We will try, if we can, to accommodate that in the overall plan. But as I've explained to a few, and using an example, if Altoona and Bondurant want coverage, and I'm just using examples, and Des Moines wants ridership, we can make a balance of both work. It just is going to change that 17 connection between the two. But, if you have a community, say West Des Moines and Urbandale want ridership and Clive wants coverage, it's gonna be a little more challenging, given that we have to make all the pieces of the puzzle fit. Again, not impossible, but that's the work we have to do after we hear from folks. We do expect, as we see most communities and systems vote on this, that you end up somewhere in the middle. It's not that you can't have a little bit of both, it's just you only have a limited number of resources. So if the commission says we're gonna focus 60% ridership and 40% coverage, and we're gonna focus that coverage in these suburbs who want it, then we'll use the budget in that way. And that's really where the direction is, really not one or the other, but a little, probably a little bit of both. As we know, we have different needs in different communities. We're taking input on the system part here itself through the end of April. And then this last slide shows that survey question we are asking riders and the public as well. We've had almost 700 surveys filled out, which is pretty good for something that at this point isn't talking about service cuts. Here's the example, but you can see where strongly prefer, halfway in between, where do you land in that? So your councils who are on DART are having conversations about this, and just encourage that conversation. And we as staff are looking forward to having some direction and working on weekend towards that draft plan once we hear that direction, and then you'll see a draft plan.
Amanda, are you asking the communities to provide responses that match up to that survey?
Everybody's doing it a little bit differently. Essentially, we'll do a round robin. Where's Ankeny at? And some of you are saying, I really want our community to choose one or the other. I've heard some say that, and that's fine. And some of you have said, well, my community's having a really hard time. We have to choose lean toward or halfway in between. And it's not a perfect science. This will get us an idea of where everybody's at so that we can work on what that actual recommendation is on the next.
Should it be standard?
Well, that's a great question.
Nobody answers that way.
I would like Councilman Schaefer and Mayor Boson speak. Do you want that more standardized? Because we can ask, do you want it more standardized that each community is answering one of these 5, or do you want it to just be ridership or coverage?
No, I think, well, at the end of the day, it's easier if it's one or the other, right?
Yeah.
And there could be some in between, but trying to plan systems is not easy.
I mean, and I apologize, Amanda, but I'm glad Mike brought that up. When we talked about this, I thought that was more like public was giving that. If you're looking from a city standpoint, it's got to be one of the.
And that's right. And this is what the public is being asked, and it is good.
Okay.
But
from a city standpoint, we got
to really don't want, who are really in the middle. And
I mean, that can be, but at the end of the day, it would be an easier method to plan one or the other. I
agree.
Okay, we can frame our
I'm sure
policies
that's a direction.
that way.
Yeah.
What's the ability to change the approach after the fact? Let's say 5 years from now, things change within one of our communities
Yeah,
and we have a different.
yeah. One thing is we're looking at making sure whatever we do is scalable, up or down, right? And so, for example, if we do microtransit in Bondurant, I can't remember how many vehicles we have on that right now, but there might be a point where you want more vehicles, and with more money, we could scale it up or, scale it down. We can make changes, right? We can always make changes. We have made changes to the system all the time. It just requires a process. And then in terms of public input and planning, and, as I say with others, part of the reason this takes so long is like people have planned their lives around a route, and we're changing that route. So it takes some time, and there's some infrastructure that goes with it. And so if we were to go heavy towards microtransit right now, we're going to change our vehicle makeup. And the microtransit vehicles have a life of 5 to 7 years, and fixed route have a life of 12 to 14 years. So we can't flip it overnight. It's going to take some time. So it's not that we can't change it. We know things will continue to change, and we need to continue to be flexible. But we do also need to be clear on those goals. And if the decision changes, then we start to make that change at a later date. One of the most common things we see in other communities is communities that have microtransit zones reaching a point where they can't afford any microtransit, and so they might want a fixed route loop or something like that that covers a similar area. but allows them to carry more people. And so we do see other agencies doing that, and that's where sometimes agencies work together on vehicle changes and other things. So I don't want to overpromise. It can't be done quickly, but it can be done.
Yeah, so one last question. Sorry. I haven't heard discussion regarding all access passes for businesses. Are we going to be maintaining that arrangement with individual businesses?
So we are planning to maintain unlimited access, but likely change it. Because again, a business, where a business is at and how much service and access their customers, whether it be an apartment building or whether it be employees or whether it be students, that contract, if it, what they want and how much they're willing to pay for it is going to be dependent on how much service they have in the area. So we're also looking at how some other agencies are doing partner programs and continue to look for ways to do more of that. So we might reinvent it a little bit, but we will still have it at in some capacity.
You have a question?
Amanda, I know you've been working hard going out to various councils and briefing them on this. Have you heard any kind of common themes or consistent messages, or feedback from those meetings?
That's a really good question. I think where I hear the biggest challenge is this desire to be efficient with the taxpayer dollar. And at the same time, the desire to have coverage. And those two things, just from a mathematical standpoint, are difficult. And so, you know, I see people, I've seen all of the councils wrestling with those trade-offs of those two. I also, you know, from a council perspective, in each community really does have some things their community wants. One of the challenges we do see, I think I heard from some of your council members, we don't have much far out west. And that comes back to, we've expanded and haven't expanded the service hours on the street. And so we have a pie. And if we want to go further out west, then we have to take away from somewhere in the core. And those are decisions we have to make, not to say you can't do it, but again, you can't have it all. And there's some places where what we want, what communities want, is not opposed, but you can't have both well. Yeah. And I would say also interest in continuing to explore those van pool shuttles and things for filling gaps. No matter what we do as a community, we're not gonna be able to serve everybody everywhere. There's still gonna be gaps because of the way we've built, because of the way we've grown. And looking at, is there a creative way, volunteer drivers, paid drivers, other ways to use vans and other models to fill some of those gaps. That's another thing I've heard from several.
All right, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. We have a report vote on the MPO vision, mission, and guiding principle. An endeavor we kicked off 18 months or so ago, coming to a conclusion.
Yes, and I'll take that, and Cass Hall is on the line. She couldn't be here in person, but so I'll leave this. If there's questions or Cass wants to jump in at all, please let me know. If you go to the next slide, yeah, like Mark said, I'm very excited to bring this to you. When we started out here, at least when I stepped into the role, I had a vision of how do we optimize the MPO, and we've checked off pretty much everything now. We did the governance assessment and the human capital plan back in September when we approved those. We last February, or this February, we did kind of part one of the strategic direction where we approved the framework. And then this is really part two of that strategic direction, which is looking at our mission, vision, guiding principles. So hopefully, like Mark said, we can conclude this effort today. Just a reminder, we do have a strategic planning committee made up of the individuals there. They've met a handful of times to go through this. And I will say, as we talk about this topic in particular, the mission, vision, and guiding principles, they really dug into that and made some good changes to what we proposed. So hopefully everyone here sees the ownership in that as well. Just a reminder, the reason that we're doing the mission, vision, guiding principles is this was some of the feedback received or the recommendations made in that governance insights report. The mission and vision that we hadn't been updated since 2018 and didn't think it necessarily reflected what we were or what we are. And the guiding principles was a new concept. So that was something important that we thought we needed to bring. At our meeting in February, Cass led us through an exercise of looking at our existing mission and vision. What do we like? What do we want to change? And that sort of thing. We received over 200 comments from 22 individuals, mostly the folks here in the room at that time. That was all compiled into some analysis and was used to create the updated mission, vision, and guiding principles. There's a link in the agenda packet that takes you to all that analysis. We won't go through that today, but if there's questions or if you want to look at it on your own, you can do that. Wanted to just remind everybody too on the definitions. When we say mission, vision, what do we mean? So again, vision is more of the forward thinking statement about what we want to aspire to be in the future. The mission is really more current, present day. It describes our purpose, why we exist, how we get our work done. And then guiding principles are really the rules or standards that govern how we go about doing that. They support our approach to the mission and vision, kind of keep us honest with ourselves. So all that said, to propose or to show you what the proposed mission and vision are, you can see them up there on the screen. They're also in the agenda packet. So vision didn't change a whole lot. It was really shortened, but kept the same basic premise. Central Iowa has a well-coordinated and effective transportation system that ensures a high quality of life. In looking at the mission statement, this was updated a little more significantly, but it reads, we collaborate across community boundaries to lead regional transportation planning, fund improvements, and drive transformational innovation for future generations. That one, we really wanted to, it had a lot of fluff, it had a lot of jargony terms in it. We really wanted to get to the point of what do we do, why do we do it? We can talk about guiding principles next, and then we can pause and get feedback and answer any questions. Again, these are new. There's 5 of them up there. So public stewardship, we will demonstrate operational, to read off my screen here, we will demonstrate operational excellence and financial accountability as a foundation for serving the region. Honorable leadership, we will prioritize regional leadership over special interests. Our actions will be transparent, civil, and driven by process over politics. Regional collaboration, we will partner with stakeholders of the region to advance the vision. Safety minded, we will view all plans, programs, and projects through the lens of improving safety. Safety was something that really stood out in the feedback we received, probably because we just completed this big safety project. And then future focused, we will learn from the past and think long-term in all of our decisions. So again, I'll pause here real quick. We do have some comparative slides. If you want to see what the old mission, new mission, we can do that. But again, just want to pause and see how does this hit you? What do you think of it? And if there's anyone that was serving on the committee that wants to speak to this too, by all means, feel free.
Bill, I have a question. I had no objection to this, but I guess I'm just curious the rationale behind removing any reference to multimodal transportation.
Yeah, we felt that, again, trying to shorten it up and just make it a little more concise, that if we talk about an effective transportation system, that is a multimodal, that is a safe system, that is all those terms.
Any other comments? I don't want to rush you through, but he's not here to move it.
Move approval.
Is there a second? Second. Good job by Moines, seconded by Clive. Any further discussion? None. All those in favor, please. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
I was gonna say, I want to thank Cass. Cass has been working with us for the last while on all of these things. Not to say we won't continue to work with her in some fashion, but I think this concludes a lot of the work that she's been doing. So thank you, Cass.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Great work.
Thank you, all the committee members and all of us that have put input and even for the questions. Moving on, we report on the fiscal year 2029 funding recommendation. Gunnar.
A quick recap where we are with this cycle of funding applications. There's no vote today. We plan to bring this back to you next month for a vote. On the screen before you is a summation of what was received in terms of applications. As you can see, there were more than $43 million worth of requests, and we anticipate having a little over $20 million to allocate. We met with the funding subcommittee 2 times, once on the 12th to hear applications for SDBG program, and then on March 25th to hear the TAP presentations as well as award deliberations. I'm not going to try to read all these to you, and these have been distributed before. We're linked in your packet. I hope you all have a chance to review them. These are the recommendations from the funding subcommittee for the SDBG project. And I'll pause briefly to show, excuse me, and these are also from the SDBG program, but for the subcategories of planning as well as bridge applications. And I will note here that during deliberations, the funding subcommittee recommended taking advantage of the ability to flex some of the SDBG dollars over to the TAP program in the amount of $200,000. This here is what the TAP application awards look like based on that recommendation. And then the last, I don't even have the last slide for you. We broke it down based on how we have funding targets within the LRTP or the Long Range Transportation Plan, and this lands within those targets pretty cleanly. I'll pause if there's anyone from the funding subcommittee who would like to add to my summary and be happy to hear from you.
Moving on, we have a report on legislative update DC trip, Gunner or Hill. Sorry.
Sure, I'll kick us off with Feature 435. This is a long-standing effort to have the 565 bypass designated as an interstate. You recall the DOT put together a plan. 4 steps are state exemption for speed, federal exemption for weight. We have a technical analysis needs to occur, and then the DOT can submit the designation request. So we've been focused very tightly on state legislation for the past 2 years, and this cycle we've had the most momentum we've had previously. Bills been introduced from the House and Senate sides. It would do a few of the things that we needed to do. One is guarantee the federal weight exemption, just to provide assurances that came out of last session. Provide that minimum speed exemption, and then also make sure that an alternatives analysis happens. And that came out of conversations with our farm stakeholders. The bill is funnel proof because they have that allocation in there. And it has made some progress thus far, passed out of Senate Commerce and is passed out of House Subcommittee and Appropriations Committee. Its next stop is in the Senate Appropriations Committee. Our understanding is that we think there's going to be a subcommittee next week, and that we would be positioned to have that out of full committee within the next week or two. So that's the latest. I'm happy to answer any questions on that. I'll just end on that piece by saying thank you. We've had a lot of your representatives advocating on this project, and we wouldn't be here without that advocacy. Next up, we're preparing for DMDC 2025. And because Feature 435 is going to be a feature priority, we're letting the partnership take the lead on scheduling. So if you have questions about when and where you might fit into MPO schedules, we're in a wait and see position until those finalized.
Note too that we do have a meeting set up with USDOT, and that's something we haven't traditionally done, but we are taking advantage this time to get to know the new administration, understand what their priorities are, be able to answer questions about what MPOs are. That's final thing, just to transition here, reauthorization is also, the process for reauthorization is also starting to get underway. Reauthorization bill will probably be something that Congress takes up next year, probably next summer, fall, but they are starting the process now with hearings and so forth. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee has launched this online portal. There's a link to it that we will send out in the post-meeting email where they're taking feedback from the public, from agencies like ours. They want that back by April 30th, and this will probably be also a topic of conversation as we go to DC and start meeting with them.
All right, up next, Director's report.
Thank you. So I wanted to, we just approved the strategic framework and the goals and missions and vision. I want to harken back to when Icon was here. They didn't show this slide, and it might be a little difficult to see, but we're about 11 years into the Water Trails project. And I just wanted to pause real quick and just acknowledge that this started here at the MPO. And I know that there's been, not all of you were on the board at the time. It's not always the most straightforward project. It's a little different. It's a little outside of our box. But I think this is an example of one of those wildly important projects that we identified that we want to start, not that we want to start doing, we've already been doing. We want to be intentional about in our strategic framework that we approved a couple meetings ago. So I just hope everyone's proud of that and just aware of the things that the MPO can do. as we look backwards, but as we also are looking forward with the work. So those of you who've been around, congrats. We've come a long way. We're not done yet, but it's kind of exciting. So another thing to kind of look back a little bit on, a little more short term, we mentioned this before that April 1st, we had our quadrennial, so every 4-year certification review with the US DOT. The purpose of that is really to make sure that the MPO is doing everything that it's federally required to do. And it's kind of I don't know, it's not the funnest meeting in the world, is it, Shelby? Like we sit there and we go through, okay, the long range plan, the federal code says you do this, have you done it? Check, but it's really, it's a really good time to reflect of, are we doing the things we're supposed to do? And then what also we might be doing that we can improve, or that we can learn from other MPOs, or the federal highway says no one else is doing that. That's really innovative. And we know that going forward. So we have received some initial feedback. I think US DOT will present to us formally in the next month or two. But the initial feedback, most importantly, we had no instances of non-compliance. So we are fully compliant with everything. Our funding's fine. We are going to be recertified. So that's the good news. There were a handful of things, or a couple of things they gave us commendations on. So these are the attaboys that they hand out. One is the relationship that we have with DART and the ongoing coordination. We have good agreements with them. We have a good ongoing relationship with DART. So that's really nice. The fact that we provide funding to DART from the MPO SDVG funds, that's kind of a best practice. That's not common from around the country. And they've acknowledged that the last several certification reviews. Yeah, that stands out as a best practice. At our previous certification, they said our website was really a hot mess and that really focused on cleaning that up. So kudos to Gunner and the team for doing that. We spent some money and we got a professional in there to really be intentional about that. And they were very happy with what they saw. They're able to find everything. So that felt good. There was a couple other things they mentioned, like the transload facility, the governance assessment that we did, that they said those are risk practices. They didn't show up in their list of commendations, but I think we should acknowledge those too. A couple of recommendations they have. They always hand out some recommendations, and these are optional. We don't have to do these, but they're usually insightful to where they're leaning, what they want to see out of MPOs. So while they said MPO and DART have a good relationship, kind of interesting, they said we should probably be engaged more with local land use and be aware of that and using that in our decision making. So that was kind of interesting to hear. You don't always hear the US DOT say that. So we need to figure out what they mean by that exactly, but just want to put that out there. They mentioned our 2080 and bylaws haven't been updated since 2018, and maybe with updated census numbers, that's something we should consider. Our long range transportation plan, typically we program projects out 20 years. We only did 10 years. And part of the reason was because we don't know what the next 10 years beyond that are going to look like in terms of funding. Things happen so fast. So they said that's a little unusual, but it's okay. But maybe we consider adding those back in. There were some things with public involvement, just making sure that we are doing what we say we're going to do and having a system to monitor that. They also brought up ADA, thinking like ADA of our office space, of materials, which was new. We hadn't heard that before, but that was something they brought up this time. And then there were some items with the TIP. Some of those were DOT. They wanted to see phasing in DOT projects, which was kind of interesting, but also making sure there's a connection between the TIP projects and our performance measures that we set as an MPO, which we do have a section in there. I guess they thought we needed to bolster that. Overall, though, very good. We'll have a more formal, full report here in the next couple of months, but wanted to share that initial thought. Moving on real quick to a couple upcoming items. We have two major planning efforts that we're getting underway now, and we'll have more formal launch of these here soon, but one is an active transportation plan. And this is going to be looking at really the bicycle pedestrian system, anything that's not automobile, looking at that. We last did a plan like this in 2009, so we're well overdue for one of these. There is some upcoming public engagement opportunities. So you can see two of them up there. On May 6th, we'll be at Confluence Brewing, and on May 8th at Right Side Ale Works in Altoona. So if anyone's interested in coming out, that should be fun. We picked those locations because they are along the trails and where people that use this system are going to be. Federal Highway also noted that was kind of a fun project or a best practice. There'll be more that we'll schedule. It's not just going to be those two. This will be an ongoing thing throughout the summer when people are out and active to get feedback. I'll also note on the next slide, we'll show you, but at the Commercial Real Estate Forum here in a few weeks, we are a sponsor of that, and that'll be what we speak to, is that active transportation plan. The other project that we're working on is a freight or goods movement plan. We've done a few of these over the years. The last time we really touched this was prior to the transload facility, and it really led to the transload facility's development. But there's just been a lot of changes in how freight happens with distribution centers and Amazon and online shopping really taking off a lot more. So we need to understand what those impacts are, where we need to make investments in infrastructure to better accommodate that, policies surrounding it and so forth. A small example of that is every community has truck routes. They don't always match up. So how do we get every community kind of on the same page with where trucks are allowed and where they're embargoed and what policies are around that? That's an example of what this plan is look at. For both of those, getting back to our governance assessment where we said we want to have more board engagement, for both of those, we'll be seeking representatives from the policy committee to serve on those kind of ad hoc steering committees for those. So if anyone's interested in either freight or active transportation, please let us know. We'll include you in that process. It's not going to be a big commitment, you know, a couple meetings over a 6-month period or something. Well, the details to be worked out, but want to put that out there for you. And if we don't hear from folks, we'll start volunteering folks to be involved. I think that's what I have for you as far as my update. Happy to take any questions. Bryce.
Can I just note that we have seats at the table for this event? If you want to be there, they always put on a good show every year. We have good information. Just send an email to myself or Dylan and we'll get you a spot at the table. By tomorrow, please.
All right. Move on to other non-action items. I just have one thing I wanted to discuss. Last meeting, we discussed Dylan's contract terms, compensation. Legal believes that we reached a directive that would authorize me to sign that contract. I just wanted to make sure without Fender here that none of the terms have changed. Nothing is, it's just been formalized. It's been reviewed by legal and by Dylan. Does anyone feel that we need to have a motion to authorize me to enter that, or are we comfortable based on legal's guidance that they believe I received that last meeting? Silence means everybody thinks I can sign it.
Yeah.
Sign it. Okay.
Well served. Good job.
And I guess we'll kind of end on a sad note, but I did want to announce for those of you who didn't see the breaking news that just happened that Jay Byers has passed. And many of you knew him through the partnership, we want to keep his loved ones in our thoughts and prayers. We appreciate all he did for Central Iowa. And I'm sure there'll be more information to come, but it is quite surprising to have that pop up. So our next meeting is on May 22nd at 4 p.m. That is 1 week later because of the DC trip. So for those of you going, we'll see you there. Otherwise, we'll see you the week after. Have a good evening.
Bye.